right, well, who is going to join us for the Spring Championship? Will it be Devou or will it be Georgec? Take it away, boys.
Thank you very much, Frodan. So it looks like game one here. We are going to see the Mage of Georgec going up against the Rogue of Devou. And Georgec has come out in a pretty good spot here because the Rogue is kind of one of those finely tuned combo decks that is just aiming to kill you once over the course of the game.
Right.
When you have 2 copies of Ice Block in your deck and you're asking your opponent to kill you 3 times, that suddenly becomes a little bit difficult. Yeah, exactly.
You're definitely challenging them at that point.
Right, so opening mulligans here. Not overly exciting from either player. Both of them have some kind of late game combo tools that they need, the Thaurissan and the Auctioneer, but nothing to really progress themselves through in the early game.
Yeah, like this Acolyte is, it's a great card, but it doesn't really have any synergies with anything in this hand right now, or with Devou's hand, really.
Yeah, so probably looking to throw it away, pick up some of his earlier cycle, the Novice Engineers and the Loot Hoarder. Doomsayer, not a great card early for tempo, so probably not too interested in picking up that. Devou, on the other hand, may just decide to keep the Gadgetzan Auctioneer just because of how important it is to cycle, but this is a much more tempo-focused matchup. He'll be looking to get things like Tomb Pillager, as you see there, down onto the board and start beating to face nice and early. The draw comes out here. Nothing to do on turn 1, so just passes over. Turn 2 for the Mage. Equally, the fireworks are going to take a little while to go off here, Frank.
Shoot you in the face and then pass, looks like.
Yep, Georgec is just going to sit back, though, and take some time to consider his options. And he's going to mouse over a few cards. I think this is something we saw him do in previous series as well, just kind of not giving away information to his opponent. He's going to try and even give some misinformation to his opponent about what he's doing with the cards in his hands.
Right. He's taking his time, even though his only... We both know his only play is to, hero power and pass.
Yeah.
But... if he makes it seem like he's got 2 or 3 other options, then, it makes Devou question maybe what's going on in this hand.
Yeah, I like as well that he's kind of bluffing the action in real life. He's actually doing the eyes going up to the corner of his head thing as if he's considering things very, very carefully, and then just goes ahead and pings the face. So very, very heavy commitment to the bluff there from Georgec.
That was a very heavy commitment. Yep. I was like, we're waiting here for quite a while for this turn.
So again, nothing too exciting on the other side. Just the hero power pass is probably going to be seen here, but just going to consider about whether he wants to pump in that 1 damage to face while he can.
Or if he wants to also run the bluffs here.
Yeah. This could be a very slow paced game if everyone just decides to bluff 3 cards in their hand every turn. So he's going to dig in for 1 damage. The dagger not overly important to use for minion removal in this matchup anyway, so it makes sense to just get the value out of it and get those attacks in for that 1 extra damage to face.
Well, we're probably just drawing 2 cards here, I'd imagine. Or we can also drop Acolyte, but I don't know if what do you think? What do you think of dropping Acolyte here?
I mean, dropping Acolyte plays perfectly into something like Dagger Up Deadly Poison, which would be a perfect 3-mana play for his opponent here. It could also choose to use that on turn 5 and use the Arcane Intellect here, find a turn 4 off the Arcane Intellect, and just go Acolyte Ping on turn 5.
Right, I like that too.
But he's just going to go ahead and play it out here, which I guess is fine. He's just considering his options, wants some board presence.
I always want to try to maximize the number of cards I can draw off an Acolyte. It's more like, it's kind of like a small engine rather than just a 1/3 creature that maybe draws you cards.
Right. The only thing I can consider here in terms of playing the Acolyte is, as I mentioned at the start, the thing you're kind of scared of as the Freeze Mage in this matchup, in a matchup that you are pretty favored in overall, is if your opponent kind of goes like coin Tomb Pillager into Tomb Pillager and just goes out from there and like pressures you. Yeah. So at least this way he's kind of discouraging the coin Tomb Pillager play, because then he can start to ping his Acolyte and pick up some value.
Yeah, it definitely gives him some time after that.
So Devou is going to have to figure out whether he wants to react to this. He can still coin the Tomb Pillager if he wants to. He's not really forced to overreact to this Acolyte. Doesn't have a clean way of dealing with it anyway. So he's going to go ahead and do it, and he's just going to give the 2 cards straight over to his opponent using the backstab.
5, 4, 4. Yeah, that's so many cards.
All right, I mean, the theory being that his opponent is going to draw these cards if he wants them anyway. He can just happily ping his own Acolyte and pick up the cards anyway, so he might as well just take the pressure off the board, plays around things like Forgotten Torch to be able to remove the Tomb Pillager, but Georgec just has the clean fireball.
The difference is just that, like, when you're pinging it yourself, you are having to expend your own resources,
right?
Whereas, like, now, Devou is actually spending his resources instead, both mana and cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Would have been forced to slow down a lot more if he had to ping his own Acolyte to pick up extra cards.
Yeah.
But the play would have ended up the same. Like, there just would be an Acolyte on the board. If he just clean fireballed it, he'd just still have an Acolyte hitting face for 1 every turn. So
it doesn't actually look like... Yeah, I think it's just... What is it? Fireball 1/1 here, right? It doesn't even look like he has that many lines here until turn 6.
Yeah, not really. The Drake is going to get coined out here by Devou, and let's see what he picks up. Does have that Gadgetzan Auctioneer in hand, so he'll be looking for ways to cycle that very, very soon and pick up some options. And there is the much-discussed Tournament Medic coming into hand.
That's what we were just talking about this guy earlier.
Yep.
Is this guy a one-of, do we know?
It's a one-of in the deck, yeah. So 4 mana, 1/8, restores 2 health to your hero when you use your hero power. So it's something that you need to kind of get to stick on the board for a little while to actually get any kind of consistent value out of it. Just healing for 2 as a one-off isn't going to be too impactful on the game, but as Frodan mentioned, we've lost Antique Healbot from the format, which was the go-to healing for the mage if they did want to run some. So
it's definitely interesting against the Zoo decks, though, because there's so many X1s in the Zoo deck, and being able to like just gain 2 life every turn, or kill an X1 and gain 2 life is just seems good. Eight health is a lot.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Things like Forbidden Ritual, flooding the board with 1/1s, Tournament Medic is pretty nice to be able to work against that. Right, and if they have to commit 8 damage into tanking into it to get rid of it, then that's kind of a win for you overall.
It's an interesting choice.
It really is. I like this play a lot from Devou, though. He recognizes that he's kind of behind in this matchup just by nature and just by not being able to get too much pressure going early.
So he's
going to take the big risk here, and he's made a massive Azir Drake.
This is the old all my eggs in this one basket here.
I mean, but I don't mind it, honestly. He does have to take risks to win this matchup because he doesn't have the kind of tempo hand that could have just kept up consistent pressure on the mage. So he needs to get the damage through as quick as possible. Something you mentioned in the previous series is you just can't give Freeze Mage all the time in the world to set up. You have to pressure them.
That's what they want. They want to win in the late game when they're able to drop their bombs, like Alexstrasza or like who else is even.
I mean, Emperor Thaurissan on a big hand of burn and just burn you out. Like,
Emperor Thaurissan with this hand is just great.
Yeah. So he does have to find a way to react to this Drake. Does have several ways to do it. Can just clean Fireball it off the board, can choose to stall with Blizzard here if he really wants to and deal with it the next turn. But that is Fireball number 2 being used right now. So the massive burn in his hand is slowly dissipating right now. But still, both Cold Bloods now invested from Devou, so his damage output is greatly limited as well.
Yeah, which is nice, because like when you're George C here, you actually have less to worry about in terms of like Leroy Jenkins. Like just a burst combo that's coming at your face.
Yeah, he's picked up both Auctioneers now, so his hand is looking a little bit slow. He has both of those Auctioneers in his hand, but nothing like, no coins, no backstabs, no preps to go with them, so the explosive power of his Miracle turns are not really that high right now. And the Freeze Mage is getting low. There is only 1 Ice Block in hand right now that is going to have to be developed fairly soon.
10 cards, though.
Yeah, 10 cards is very true.
He's got the full grip.
He certainly has, but he still needs to find the time to use them.
That's the question, yeah.
Yeah, 10 cards in hand doesn't mean an awful lot if you're dead. It doesn't really matter how many cards are in your hand.
You can't take them with you, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get them out into play somehow, and he is forced to develop the Ice Block sooner rather than later because of that damage that that Devou jammed in with the Azir Drake, 12 damage with the Cold Bloods. Tournament Medic not quite going to cut it here. He can heal for 2, but I'm going to have to say that Ice Block comes down pretty soon. He may choose to rely on the barrier and go that way, but if he's developing a secret here, I feel like it may as well be the block. He's going to use both and an Ice Lance, so a very defensive play. Devou just, again, staring at this hand of 2 Auctioneers. Just another Drake, so still no chance to go off with this Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Right, yes. No real cards that can actually chain into the Auctioneers, unfortunately.
Okay.
Well, that's a start.
Yeah, now this is getting kind of exciting, because there's no Flame Strike in George C's hand right now, so if a big board of Resilient minions was to get concealed, he could stall it out with a Blizzard, but he'd have no way of clearing it out of hand.
Oh, Torch is very good here.
Torch is not bad, but Blood Mage, yeah, I was going to say Blood Mage Blizzard is looking pretty appealing.
That's actually very good.
Does leave the Drake in play, though, which is a scary source of spell damage to leave up for a rogue deck, but he's chilling right now at 16 health with an Ice Block up, so he won't be feeling too pressured.
And ideally, it's only a 1-turn window before we can hero power that guy.
Right. But this is a pretty fantastic-looking Auctioneer turn, because not only do you conceal your Auctioneer, you also remove that 4/1 Drake from the easy removal of just a ping from your opponent.
And that changes our original plan there.
Yep. Gonna go ahead and remove the Blood Mage. We'll cycle 1 more card for George C. But the Conceal coming down is a big deal. As we said, no Flame Strike in hand for Georgec. I believe he's not even running one in the deck, if I remember from what from looking at it. So he's going to have to find a way to deal with this. Blizzard does at least stall the Auctioneer and get rid of the Drake problem, but the Auctioneer still lives on board. So Devou is going to draw pretty much his entire deck this turn.
Well, George is interested in letting the pain speak to him, it seems.
So Devou needs to start this turn very quickly no matter what he does, because he's going to need to react to the cards that he draws to find the right play here. He may just try and go for lethal if that's at all possible. Fires the Shiv at face, already has one Eviscerate in his hand, so if we can pick up some more sources of damage, then we may be in business. But the big problem is that double Cold Blood already being used, which limits the damage output a lot.
It's so funny seeing Gadgets and Auctioneer, because like remember, the cost went up on this guy and he saw no play whatsoever after that, but now he's back. Now he's good enough still.
Right, I always feel kind of sad for Bomb Lobber in situations like this, because Bomb Lobber was introduced in the game, a lot of people theorized, as a counter to stealth Gadgetzan Auctioneers, but it came out at the same time as Auctioneer was nerfed, so it wasn't seeing play. And now Auctioneer is back, but Bomb Lobber has rotated out of the set with GVG.
So he never had his time to shine.
It just never had its time. I'm telling you, Bomb Lobber could have been the MVP of Hearthstone for a while.
He could have been a contender, as they say.
Yep. So barrier number 2 does come in, which gives him a little bit of protection for his ice block here, but the immediate Gadgetzan Auctioneer problem does have to be dealt with. If the ice barrier were to come down, there isn't enough damage in hand from Devou to just pop without activating any physical damage to proc it.
And like we both know that there's another Auctioneer right in his hand, so I mean the card drawing does not seem to have an end anytime soon.
It doesn't, but again, we keep coming back to it. The 2 Cold Bloods have already been used, so the amount of possible damage output in Devou's deck is quickly evaporating.
Yeah, it's basically just whatever's on the card at this point.
Right. We may even see a situation here where the Rogue just runs out of damage, and then a defensive Alexstrasza just creates too much health on the Freeze Mage at the end of the game for the Rogue to ever hope to deal. That's a way that we've seen Miracle Rogue games end in the past against Freeze Mage, but there's still a number of different routes this could take. Georgec heavily considering all of his options here.
I keep looking at the Georgec profile image, and it kind of gives you an idea of how young he is.
Right, yeah. The camera positioning is very fitting, for selling the idea that he is a young child.
And then I'm like, maybe he heard us because he sat up a little bit.
It's like, whoa, exposed. It's all right. I'm a big boy, honestly.
This 1-8's actually very well positioned right here. It seems like, you know, I would think so if I was Georgec. You know, you can start hero power and gaining a life. You're at 8 right now, but you also have 2 secrets, which are very defensive, so...
Yeah, so technically as long as physical damage comes in, he's actually at 16 right now, and this is a situation where the Tournament Medic can shine, honestly, because, as I said, the Rogue's deck is running low on damage at this point, so that's either 8 damage that needs to be sunk into this Tournament Medic, or it's just a persistent threat on the board.
Oof, deals 6 with the Shadow Strike.
SI7 Agent can finish it off if he would like to, but that is 2 damage essentially from the SI, again, out of the deck. The damage from the Battlecry that has not gone face to be able to take out the Tournament Medic. There is the barrier being procced. That's even more health from Georgec. And Georgec has a little bit of a reaction to that, like a knowing smile. Almost shook his head a little bit as if he thinks attacking the ice barrier there was a mistake from Devou.
There's a larger torch.
There it is. 1 Roaring Torch in hand, 1 Forgotten Torch that still needs to be cast. The Torches is just such a nice card, because we saw him have to use both Fireballs for board control in the early game, but Forgotten Torch is just a card that you can just put those Fireballs back in your deck afterwards and just make sure you can build up a bunch of buttons.
No less.
3 mana. Does still have a board to deal with here. He is just down to his ice block here. Still yet to draw the second ice block as well, so he doesn't have a great deal of security right now, so he does need to keep controlling the board. And honestly, I feel like the option of just running the Rogue out of damage over the course of the game might be his best option now. Just exhaust the Rogue's options.
What to do?
What do you feel about dropping Alexstrasza and maybe trying to burn him out with torches? Is that an option?
I mean, if you were to Alexstrasza your opponent's face here, you're almost guaranteed to lose your ice block on the next turn. And you don't have the damage set up immediately to deal with it. You have 3 from the torch, you have the 6 from the Roaring Torch. So without the second ice block in hand, what would happen is that you'd lose your first block. You don't have the win in hand. So unless you top decked exactly your second block, you'd be in a really big trouble.
Be a little more conservative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, Backstab and Van Cleef is picked up. This Van Cleef may be one of his last hopes here, honestly, is something that can really stick to the board and be persistent damage. He may just have to go all in at some point on a huge Van Cleef, which has a pretty decent hand to be able to do that as well. He is running low on cards, though, so we may just be in the situation where that second Auctioneer never gets played because it's just going to indicate fatigue for the Rogue player. Well, apparently I'm wrong. He's going to try and dig through his deck as quickly as possible. I'm not sure exactly how many cards he has left, but it does not look like many. Picks up the prep, draws even more cards.
Yeah, this could be a very big Van Cleef if he wants to play some free cards and then play a Van Cleef afterward.
Right.
Like, this could be a 10-10 or a 12-12.
So we go ahead and eviscerate the Acolyte, which again is a lot of damage invested.
Draws a card. Still possible.
Yeah, the Van Cleef does come down here as a 10-10.
Very sizable. But we know, like, the 10 damage is going to be prevented.
It is. He does have the Ice Lance to be able to prevent that, but again, that's another resource that he can then not use to burn his opponent back after the Alexstrasza if the game tends to go that way. But Roaring Torch on the Gadgetzan, Ice Lance on the Edwin Van Cleef, and Doomsayer is a play that looks appealing. It looks like it'll have a chance of going off, but I think he's drawn nearly his entire deck here, and I think you've only seen one sap used, which would immediately deal with that Doomsayer.
Well, is the secret an Ice Block? Do we know?
It is Ice Block, yeah.
Okay.
So he does have that guaranteed protection, and the Doomsayer play is the play he's going to go for. He's going to go for double Doomsayer, in fact, trying to get them both to stick. And this makes a lot of sense. He just knows he needs to deal with that 10-10.
I'm almost out of cards.
Oh, okay, there is literally only 2 cards left in the deck. So yeah, this very much looks like it's gone down the line that I predicted, where he's just going to try and run him out of stuff here.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, we know his hand. It looks like that's very possible. Like, he basically has a Leroy. And maybe?
Zarel, he's going to try and pick up an option that helps him clear out these Doomsayers. King's Blood is the worst possible one he could have got. That is just draw a card. That is the last thing he wants to do right now. He's going to backstab his own Zarel, still looking for answers. Picks up Briarthorn, and now he's just going to be forced to Leroy. Leroy Briarthorn does help him to pop the Ice Block this turn, which does create a scenario, but now he is going to lose his whole board. And I think defensive Alexstrasza now will lock up game 1 here for George C.
Yeah, it just puts George C back up to 15.
Sure does. Both Doomsayers go off, just for good measure, just in case one wasn't enough.
There's an Archmage Antonidas, just in case.
Yeah, there is the defensive Alexstrasza. Out of cards, all of his damage used. The remaining Toxin is just the King's Blood Toxin. And that is game 1 to George C. So huge victory from George C. As we mentioned, the stakes